All right, so hi everybody. We're going to get started. So good evening and thank you for joining this discussion on the state of the Albany Police Department and the future of community policing. After this opening, I'll introduce the panel who will speak briefly, and then we will open the floor for questions and discussion. As with our previous conversations, we strive to keep presentations short to ensure the maximum time for discussion. We also videotape these meetings for those who cannot attend. My name is Danielle Hilly, and I am a co-founder of A Block at a Time, also called Abbott, along with Zach Garafalo, who is here, and Jonathan Capra, who was unable to join us tonight. Abbott's goal is community building and the strengthening of relationships with agencies that impact our communities. Our organization has chosen to take a different approach to this by empowering the community to have a more direct voice, ensuring that the tough conversations are had, and working to bring as many involved people to the table. The police department is one of these agencies. Over the last decade, there have been a lot of changes here in Albany. In fact, just over 10 years ago, on September 6, 2009, then Police Chief James Tuffy resigned amid accusations of racism, and Albany set down a path to change policing in our city. Since then, Albany has had 3 police chiefs and 1 acting police chief, instituted community policing, rolled out body camera use for all officers, and worked to rebuild and strengthen the relationships between the community and police. In 2019, we face new challenges, including nationwide issues in recruitment and retention of law enforcement officers. Unfortunately, Albany has not been spared, and that has resulted in a decrease in the number of officers and other law enforcement personnel. This shortage has led to unfilled positions and a need to reevaluate how the department as a whole operates to ensure sustainability. I think one of the things that's not discussed enough is the fact that Albany's version of community policing actually requires more resources than traditional policing. This includes training such as cultural competency and implicit bias and manpower. The beat officers, which are a key part of Albany's community policing, require removing officers from patrol to fill those positions. With the growing number of vacant positions department-wide, many neighborhoods have seen their beat officers' positions go unfilled for months, and some more than a year. There is no one particular fault. There's no one in particular fault. It is a combination of circumstances. But as a community, I think it is important that we understand these circumstances, we understand the demands we place on the department, and we discuss ways that we can assist in shifting perception, encouraging recruitment and retention, and being good partners to ensure a sustainable department that meets our expectations. Although we cannot discuss everything in the time allotted, I would like for the community to get an update on what's going on and how it affects policing in our communities. This includes the current status of the department, what that means for officers, what's in the works to remedy any shortages, how Albany's version of community policing is affected, what that means for us as residents, the steps the city is taking, and how the community can build a better relationship and partner with the police department, our city, and our police officers. I would like to introduce those in our hot seats today. We have our mayor, Kathy Sheehan. We have our police chief, Eric Hawkins. And we have the Albany Police Officers Union President, Greg McGee. For anyone who is not familiar with the union is a bargaining unit for the non-command staff, which includes officers and dispatchers. The union fights for the benefits of officers and works to ensure expectations are met as employees. Because of this, we may hear some different messages, which is fine. There's different messages that come from the community as well. But I think that is really the reason why it's so important to have these conversations. It's really important for us to hear my side, your side, and everyone's side, so we can decide how we as a community go about addressing these issues. So thank you everyone for coming today, and I'm going to turn it over to our mayor first, just to give an introduction, say hi, and then we will go down the row, and then I'll turn it over to the community for questions and comments.
Well, thank you, Danielle, and I think I'll start by sort of addressing where we are right now, because we did just release the city budget, and so there's been a lot of concern with respect to resources in the police department. And I'd like to start by just talking about how I look at the mayor's role with respect to the police department. You know, one of the things that when I became mayor, Chief Krokoff spent some time talking to me about are the challenges that police departments across the country have faced when they've become too politicized. And I think we've seen examples of that from during the civil rights movement, police forces being used to enforce Jim Crow laws in the South, to you know, the politicization of police work. And he felt very strongly that it was important that the police department be able to focus on its strategic plan and its goals and its objectives in conversation with the community, and not have that be overly politicized. And I support that. I think that the role of a mayor is to hire people who are expert in whatever area you're hiring them, whether it's the commissioner of our Department of General Services or a police chief, and then ensure that that individual has the resources that they need in order to be able to deliver the vision of the police department. And the context of that is that the goal of our administration is to have a city where every neighborhood works, where every neighborhood is safe, where every neighborhood has quality housing that's affordable to the people that live there, and where people have access to good jobs and a great education. And the police department is just one part of that. In fact, the police department is only one part of public safety. There are other elements to public safety that matter a lot to our police officers, like the danger that's presented by vacant and abandoned buildings that we need to address in order to ensure that our officers are safe and that we don't have places that are magnets for trouble. Like the work that our Department of General Services does right alongside the police department. When they see a building that's been being broken into, they rely on our Department of General Services to do their job, to be there to board it up and to make sure that it's not open to vagrants. The same thing with cleaning up lots. The same thing with making sure that our infrastructure, like the street lights that we're converting, that we're using the technology that allows us to have safer streets. And so we do that in partnership with the police department. As a matter of fact, the police department recently participated in a task force around our parks, because if we're going to have safe neighborhoods, we need to have safe parks. And the police department is part of that, right? Helping us to understand what are the environmental factors that exist in a particular pocket park or in a larger park in the city that contributes to issues around public safety. And so I really view the role of the mayor as ensuring that the department has the resources that it needs to execute on its mission, that that mission be something that is created within the department and has the support of the men and women of the department, and that we are working alongside the department to ensure that other areas of our city workforce are working in concert with the police department to deliver a city where every neighborhood works. And there are challenges that we're going to talk about tonight that just have existed in the last 18 to 24 months. There are challenges that we are part of a nationwide challenge with respect to the recruitment of police officers. But one of the things that I want to stress is that this has never been a budgetary issue. The number of police officers in the budget has never changed under my administration. We have fully funded those positions. The challenge has been around recruitment for those positions and the capacity of the department to train police officers. And so those are two factors that have led to the fact that we do not have a full contingent of police officers. That's something that we're working, right? Part of my job is to give the department the resources it needs. So the chief and his command staff have identified space that will allow the department to have a very large class of recruits for its next recruitment class so that they're able to get back to full strength. We also have to look at our pay scale. We don't pay our police officers enough. It's something I've been saying for the last 4 years. we were not successful in negotiating a contract with the union. That's the reality of union negotiations. So we were not successful in reaching a contract, and that means an arbitrator decides how much our police officers are going to be paid. And so we have been without an increase and without a contract for far too many years. And we want to be able to pay our police officers more. That's a third contributing factor to the challenge around recruitment. We have to be competitive in pay. But I, as mayor, cannot legally, nor can the chief legally, unilaterally give raises to our police officers. So that's why you don't see them in the contract. We cannot put them in the contract, in the budget, sorry. We cannot put them in the budget until we negotiate them with the police department. So we want to ensure that we can move forward. We hope that we're able to get back to the negotiating table. Right now, we're precluded from negotiating for internal reasons, but we also need to make sure that we're competitive in pay. So I feel confident that the resources that are provided in the 2020 budget will result in us being able to compensate our police officers better than we are now, and get us up to full strength so that we can have a full contingent of police officers on duty and training and get us back up to full strength.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief?
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I want to first start off by acknowledging the two people who are up here with me, because they're extremely important to me as a police chief. Because any chief in this country needs to have support, have a relationship with the mayor or the city manager, whoever's running the city, and also with the president of the union that represents the officers in that city. And I've been here now a little bit over a year, and I can say that I've been very, very fortunate. I'm a very, very lucky person to have the relationship that I have with these two people who are up here. Like the mayor said, the mayor during my time here has never politicized this department, has never given any sort of pressure in any sort of way in terms of police operations, and I appreciate having that sort of autonomy, free of politics in the police department. And my union president has been a very, very good partner for me in the police department. We need to, when there are things happening, when there's issues, there are always going to be personnel issues, there are always going to be other type of internal issues, and we must, as police chiefs, have a relationship with the union president, and I have a very, very good relationship with mine. So I appreciate the both of them for their support and for their partnership. And and as we're talking about police operations, at first I want to say that things are looking very, very bright in our police department. I must say that if you rewound this back over a year ago, I think that there were some challenges that we had some questions about how we're going to navigate our way through. We had staffing shortages. We had issues in our community, and where there was a lot of violence in certain areas of our community. And we needed to work in partnership internally with our elected officials, with our members of our department, with our community, in order to come up with some strategies in order to address a lot of these issues that we're having. And I must say that I'm very grateful. But we still have some challenges right now. And as we talk about the current state of the police department, I think right now the biggest challenge that we have right now, and I think both the mayor and our union president would agree with this, is our staffing issues that we have. And right now we're running quite a bit short. We're as the mayor said, we're budgeted at 342 officers, and right now we're about 47 short. So we have 47 vacancies at this point. And so that creates a number of challenges, because we're committed to providing the same level of service now with under 300 officers than we had with 342 officers, because the community has demanded that, and I've made a commitment, and my staff has made a commitment to continue to provide that same level of service. So it means having the same level of minimum staffing out on the road. Not compromising our response times to major crimes. That means investigating all major crimes. That means community policing. quality of life, all the things that people in the community are asking for from the police department. And so that's a testament to these officers that we have, and you see some of them around here in uniform that have come because they've all stepped up. Because we've asked them to do more with fewer officers. So we have officers now who are working double shifts. We have officers who are being mandated to work. They've been forced to work over after they work their normal shifts. We have officers who can't attend family functions, birthdays and other holidays and those sorts of things because they've made a commitment to serve in this community even though we have fewer officers to do so. And so I just put that out there to give context to some of the issues that we're having because this won't last long. And I promised my officers that, and I promised the community that, and it will not. Because we have a plan in place to recruit, to retain, and to get our numbers back where they need to be, and to get them back there in a relatively short period of time. And once we do that, that'll relieve some of the pressure and some of the stress that we're having on our officers right now, and it'll also give us some flexibility in doing some other things we want to do in the community. But just going back to recruitment and retention, one of the reasons why we're so short right now is because a lot of folks in here who may work in public service know a lot of police officers and firefighters come into this business and they work for 20 to 25 years and they retire. Those are their normal retirement cycles. And so at any given time, you can have a group of officers who reach that 20 or 25 or anywhere in between, and it's time to go, and they leave. We can have some additional stress where officers may look to go to other places for other opportunities, whether it be for higher pay or whether it be for to be closer to family or whatever it may be, and you have those additional stresses and those additional challenges. So you have to, so periodically in any police organization, you're going to have a time when there's going to be a mass exodus of officers leaving the department. And we've experienced that over the last 2 or 3 years. And so we've developed a plan to address this in the short term, but also to have a long-term solution for this as well. And that's why we've undergone also an internal adjustment to our organizational structure. You know, we call it reorganization or restructuring or whatever we want to call it, but the fact of the matter is we're going to be adjusting our internal structure so that when we have these sorts of challenges a year from now, and 3 years, and 5 years from now, we won't be in a situation where we're having this added stress on our officers. And so that's one thing that's happening for us right now. As the mayor talked about, one of the challenges that we've had in terms of recruitment is that we've been limited to 20 recruits at a time in our police academy. So we can hire 20 officers out the academy, and if we have 20 or 25 or more who leave, and we're back to where we were before or even less. And so we've been researching, and we're fairly confident that we will be able to acquire some space that will allow us to train upwards to 50 or 60 or maybe even 70 recruits at a time. And we're hopeful, we're optimistic that we believe that this is going to happen. And if this comes about, then our next recruit class, which will be in early 2020, will be a class that will get us back up, if not full staff, real close to being full staff. And then allow us, as we move forward, in the middle of 2020 or in the fall of 2020, then we can use that same space in order to fill any other vacancies that we may have. And so I'm very, very optimistic about the prospects in terms of recruitment and staffing for our department. We're going to be creating some opportunities for officers. You know, one of the things that I consistently hear, this is not in police departments, but any organization, people want to have an opportunity to do different things. People want an opportunity to grow. They want an opportunity to master whatever they're doing, and then after a certain amount of years, they want to do other stuff. And with our staffing situation right now, and with our current organizational structure, it just doesn't permit that. And so we've got to give officers an opportunity. There's hope in this feeling that they can it can optimize their talents. It can maximize it with all of this training and all these things that they've been doing. And so we're gonna be creating some things within our department to allow some professional tracks and some professional development within our officers. That's gonna help with morale, that's gonna help with recruitment. You know, people from the outside are gonna hear some of these things that are happening in our place, and we're gonna get some interest from other people. And so that's really what we're looking at. We're looking to get some people in here, creating an organizational structure that will keep those who are here, working here, and also have a place that attracts others. You know, I've heard stories since I've been here about how this used to be the place where everybody, all law enforcement officers in this region wanted to come. You know, this was it. And I hear consistently that it's not quite like it used to be. Well, my vision and the vision of our staff and the vision of all of the other officers in this place is to get this police department back to that place. And we're optimistic that we're gonna get there. And so we've got, we're doing that, we're doing a number of things with officer wellness. We're, you know, some of the strategies that we've had in terms of addressing crime in the community have been showing some positive signs. You know, any crime that we have in this community, any violent crime is one violent crime too many. Any shooting is one shooting too many. So we take everyone seriously. But one thing I can say to the community is that there has been some progress in terms of addressing some of the violence and some of the other social quality of life crimes that we've seen in our cities. Because when we look at our numbers right now, year to date compared to last year, we're down between 8 and 9% in terms of violent crimes year to date. Our shootings are down between 15 and 17%. In terms of individuals who have been shot in this community. Our property crimes are down somewhere around 7%. And so we're not waving a flag of success in terms of some of the activities in our community. But the message to our community is we are making progress, and we will make more progress. There's still some things that we're working on. There's still some issues. There's still some challenges that we know exist in this community. But we're slowly and methodically picking our way through these challenges, and we're making some significant progress in addressing some of these things. And so I'll leave it at that. I look forward to hearing some of the feedback and questions from you all who come, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, folks. My name is Frank McGee. I'm the president of the Albany Police Officers Union. I started my 13th year in July. I took over as president of the union in April. Before that, I was vice president, and before that, I was a shop steward for the Midnight Squad. First, I'd like to thank the mayor for attending, Chief Hawkins. Thank you, Danielle, for inviting me. I have some numbers. They're just the cold hard numbers that we deal with. With Chief Hawkins being here for the year that he's been here now, we have a great relationship. We meet regularly for labor management meetings. We discuss our issues. We brainstorm. We're trying to figure out what we can do to help fix things in the department. One of the big things is morale, you know, the work environment that we come into. Obviously, you know, I'm very outspoken, and I'll tell you like it is. Right now, we're basically hemorrhaging. There's not going to sugarcoat it. We, you know, whether you look at communications or you look at the officers. Communications, we're budgeted for 39. We currently have 26 with 5 new hires. What we just had a dispatcher put us 2 weeks in. We have another dispatcher who is going out long-term on surgery. Some of these dispatchers are working 70-hour plus work weeks. I know meeting with Chief Hawkins, that was one of the big concerns, is having these, you know, dispatchers or officers working so much. We're burning our folks out. So with the help of Chief Hawkins, we did a recruitment drive. That's where we're starting to get our staffing levels back up. We also addressed some of the building issues that our dispatchers are having currently right now. They're basically in an outdated, you know, for all intents and purposes, I would not want to work in that building. They constantly have sewage backups. So with Chief Hawkins, he came, and we're going to address that. We're going to try to get that fixed. All these issues mainly focused well before Chief Hawkins came here. It's through Chief Hawkins we've actually been able to address a lot of these issues. Like I said, it's phenomenal to actually work with a chief who understands what we're dealing with. On the police department side, if you look, we're budgeted for just officers and detectives at 272. I went through our seniority roster today. Right now, our current number is 219 officers and detectives. So we're actually down 53 from that number. Out of the 219 officers, we have 52 detectives. We have 5 officers on long-term medical leave, 3 officers on long-term military leave, 3 officers who are currently out suspended, leaving us with 156 officers, barring the detectives. Out of those 156 officers, we actually only have 102 physical bodies to handle the call volume that we have in terms of patrol. So you take out our training unit, you take out our neighborhood engagement unit, and we just deal with just solely patrol officers, we have 102. In a 24-hour time frame, when you have to man all 3 shifts at both stations and our desk officers, it requires 63 officers for a 24-hour time frame. So we don't even have double that for patrol, which means these younger officers are getting mandated constantly. They're getting burned out. It's unhealthy. As of today, there are 28 officers / detectives that could walk out the door and retire. We have an additional 6 that can leave in 2020. 22 members of the command staff, from the deputy chief to our lowest sergeant, could walk out the door as well today, if they chose to do so. Since December 13th of 2018, when I looked at our seniority roster, we've had 6 bosses retire, 14 officers / detectives retire. We've had 8 officers quit, 1 female, 1 male, who completed their field training and just after field training left and quit. We've had 3 leave for personal issues. We've had 3 leave for trades type jobs. They went to do construction style jobs. We've lost 3 to Waterville, if you include Chief Gerasi now. We've lost 1 to Gilliland and 2 to the New York State Police. And we've just lost another one to Peekskill Police. He went down there to be closer to home. In the last 5 years, we've lost approximately 12 officers of the state police. We've lost 2 to Gilliland in the last year and a half. We've lost 1 to Colony. In the past, this year alone, the state police sent out canvas letters. In February, the state police hired. Right now, as it sits, there are 14 Albany officers who are openly saying that they are processing for the New York State Police. We have 16 in the academy. We started with 21. We're down to 5. So, as Chief Hawkins touched on, what we're hiring, we're not filling our vacancies. The bottom line is we're underpaid. We're underpaid, we're understaffed, we're overworked. We haven't had a contract. We had to go to arbitration in 2014 and 15. In those fiscal years, the city offered us a 0.5% raise for both years. I looked at the surrounding agencies, and in those fiscal years, 14 and 15, other agencies such as Schenectady and Niskayuna received a 2% raise for those fiscal years. Right now, as it sits, if we can break it down, we can just do Central Avenue. If you went up Central Avenue and compared our salaries to the other agencies going up Central Avenue, a Colony officer is making $83,000 a year. A Niskayuna officer is making $90,000 a year. And a Schenectady officer who, it's a city, inner city police department like ourselves, they're making $78,000 a year. An Albany officer tops out at $66,000 a year. We are one of the lowest paid agencies in the area, if not the lowest paid now. We are several years behind on the contract, and these officers are just flat out leaving. The other compounding issue onto that is the retirement system. These younger officers have a different tier now compared to myself, where I'm tier 2. If you're a younger officer and you're a tier 6 retirement system in New York State, you have to work somewhere where the base pay is higher, because you can only contribute 10% of your overtime towards your pension. So if you work here in Albany and you're making $66,000, you can only contribute 10% of that, which is great, if an officer is making $95,000 a year, being mandated constantly, but he can't contribute that towards his pension where I can. So now you need to go to Colony where you can make $83,000 and you can contribute $10,000 towards or 10% more towards your pension. You're actually having a higher base salary in theory when you go to retire. I can tell you the numbers. A 4-year officer in Gilliland makes $83,794 compared to a 4-year officer here in Albany, making $66,692. A 12-year officer, that was the most comparable I can find for somebody like myself. A Gilliland officer of 12 years makes $88,021. I make $68,000 with my longevity pay. It's a $20,000 difference. For me, if I wasn't so invested at this point in my career, I would leave to go there so that I could provide for my family. Why not go somewhere where I can make $20,000 more and do less work? But I stay here because I have pride in working for the Albany Police Department. It's very hard now. When I first came on, you had exams when we had the civil service that went down the block. It's very hard to find that now. This past exam, we had 820 people sign up for the test. 490, just a little 490 actually showed up for that test. So it's making it very hard. During that same day, the New York State Police did their physical agility test. A New York State trooper who has 4 years on the job makes $101,000 a year. A 12-year New York State trooper makes $114,000 a year. In 2016, a Schenectady cop was making $73,455. He's continued with that raise, and like I said, Schenectady is now making a little over $78,000. When we compare things, and I know sometimes in negotiations it's always brought up that we compare us to the fire department. The city of Albany has one of the highest paid fire departments outside of New York City, but yet we're the lowest paid police department. It doesn't correlate. So right now, what we're seeing is our most talented, experienced officers are leaving, they're retiring. We need that experience. We want to retain that. We want those guys here to train the younger guys that are coming in here, shape the brighter, younger minds. We're also losing our younger officers. These guys are coming in, and some of these guys are bright individuals. They have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. They're coming here, they're getting the training, they're walking on the stage, graduating as an Albany officer, and they're walking off the stage and going to another agency. So I appreciate everyone being here. I will answer any questions that I can answer. Appreciate Chief Hawkins and the mayor for also attending.
Thank you. So we're gonna start opening this up to questions. Do you have anyone who wants to go first?
Yeah, Mayor, how do you justify increasing the budget as well as giving increases to white-collar government workers when the people of Albany are already so impoverished?
So, you know, as you heard, we have to compete to hire employees to fill very important positions throughout the city. The competition that the police department faces with other agencies as well as with New York State is true of all of our other departments. So we lose attorneys to the state, we lose employees to state government and to other agencies, and we have to remain competitive. The difference between our unionized workforce and our white-collar workforce is that the only opportunity we have to put pay increases to give pay increases to people is during the budget process for our white-collar employees. And so that's why you see those salary changes in those in the city budget. We cannot put pay increases in until we negotiate them with our union employees. That doesn't mean that we're not going to provide for pay increases. I've said it before and I will say it again. We do not pay our police officers enough. It is why we have challenges recruiting police officers. We understand that. And we want to be able to negotiate with the union. We want to be able to get back to the table. To your point though about poverty in the city of Albany, one of the things that I think is really important is that we look at what we need to pay people and what we should be paying people for the work that they're doing, not based on the poverty level in our city. And I'll give you an example. If you say that we pay our police officers X amount more than the median income of our city, what you're saying is that in Niskayuna or in Guilderland, all those places that you know, were just laid out, that those officers should be paid more because the people who live in those communities are wealthier. And that's not, you know, to me, that's not the measure. So yes, we have issues with poverty here in the city of Albany. We have to ensure that we're doing all that we can to put people on a pathway to a career and to a ladders out of poverty. And we can have another whole forum where we talk about all of the work that we are doing and all of the successes that we're having in that arena. But I don't want, I will not buy into the argument that because we have low median incomes, because this is a city where poverty is concentrated, that means that the people who work for our city should also have low median incomes. We need to pay people competitively so that we can attract them and have them come here and work. So I've had that posited to me before, particularly with our police department, and I think as Officer McGee just very eloquently laid out, you know, that is a death spiral argument, because we're not gonna base our officers' pay at a lower level simply because we have a lower median income in the city of Albany.
I appreciate that, and I would just end by saying that I don't think it's fair to have to take money from the police officers or any government service for that matter, just because we can't balance the budget. I think that's the government's job to do that, so I wouldn't put the burden on the taxpayers or the civil service, but thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Okay, I'd like to go to Rose. Donald, public comment?
Caught her by surprise. I did hear the rules again, and I will be maybe 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. I'm Donald Stewart, and really I feel your frustration, I feel your pain. I spent 47 years in corporate America, and so I understand the budgetary constraints as well as labor issues that happen. I would like to just ask the question in terms of recruitment or perhaps growing your own. Are there attempts to reach the colleges? Sometimes college students, university students, will be a fertile field to come into law enforcement. I am a combat military veteran as well, but I know the military many times coming out will be looking for public service type jobs. Everyone is not suited for that, I understand that. But those two venues, college campuses and the military, could you just, one of you, perhaps address the efforts to deal into those populations?
Yeah, thank you, sir. And we've done a number of recruitment efforts in our local colleges, and, you know, because we recognize that there are a number of criminal justice students, and even those who are involved in criminal justice. One of the things that, you know, they talk about in police departments right now is diversity. And most people think about diversity in terms of race and gender. One of the things we're looking at in terms of diversity is diversity of experience, diversity of thought. So we're doing some things in our colleges and in our two-year schools that where we're looking at non-traditional police applicants as well as criminal justice applicants. So we're doing a number of things there. But one of the things I think that's really exciting in terms of recruitment that will be new for us going into 2020 is a full-time police cadet program. And right now, individuals have to be 20 and a half years old in order to become a police officer in Albany. So what we were seeing is that these kids from Albany, once they graduate from high school at 18 years old, there's this 2 or 2.5 year gap between the time when they can even apply to become an officer. So, and we were losing a lot of those kids. Kids were going to school, they were going to trade schools, they were going to get other jobs, and then 2 years later, they're not interested in being police officers. And so what we want to do is create a full-time police cadet program that's targeting those individuals between 18 and 20 years old, capture them, and we're going to really be recruiting from the Albany School District. You know, we're going to have some partnerships with the school district with this, where we can capture some of those kids getting out of high school, bring them into an in-house police cadet program, allow them to work with us for 2 months. They can experience law enforcement. They can see if this is a career that they're interested in, and they give us an opportunity to assess and evaluate them as well. And also, we're going to have an educational component to that, because what I consistently hear from a lot of the parents when I'm trying to recruit some of the kids to the police department is that they want to send their kids to school. They want to send them to college first. And, you know, and then once they get a couple of years of college under their belt, and they'll think about, you know, encouraging their kid to become a police officer. Well, now we're taking that barrier down. You know, we're telling our parents that being a police officer and going to college are not mutually exclusive concepts. You can come in with us, you can learn the Albany way, learn law enforcement, and we're gonna send you to a community college so you can work on whatever interests you have in terms of education. And then after a couple of years, then if they meet the requirements, then we can send them to our own in-house police academy. So this will open up our applicant pool. It'll also allow us to recruit a lot more individuals from the city of Albany.
So next question is from Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Jemmy. I'm with the Albany Community Policing Advisory Committee. And I appreciate she gave us a briefing on the restructuring, and I understand the issues that were involved and the problems that you're facing. As a member of ACPAC, though, my primary concern is community policing. We are nationally recognized for our efforts in community policing. My concern is that with fewer officers on the street and doubling, sometimes even more than doubling the beat that some of these officers have to walk, we're now concerned with, where is community policing? Community policing is the officer on the street. Community policing is the officers having good communication with the community. You can't do that without the officers. Now, I understand the shortage and I understand your efforts to try to remedy that problem. But when the problem is solved, whenever that is in the future, are you committed to putting those officers back into the neighborhoods again? Because right now, there's a lot of vacancies in the beats, and that's where we really need the officers to be one.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Joe, and for allowing me to clarify that, because absolutely, I think you outlined and you really did, you illustrated perfectly what our challenge is right now. First of all, yes, we are committed to community policing. It's, it's something that this department, as you said, they've won national awards. They've been recognized nationally for community policing efforts, and we're absolutely committed to community policing. And you're absolutely right. There are some community policing beats, some neighborhood engagement officers, beat officers, that we have been unable to fill those vacancies because of our staffing shortages that Officer McGee talked about. You talked about how short we are right now and the stress that we're placing on some of our patrol officers. Well, in order to kind of relieve that stress and minimize it, then we've had to adopt a position that we can't fill some of those positions right now. But to get to your question, once we're fully staffed, which I'm very confident that will happen fairly soon, then yes, we are going to fill those seats. Now, there's going to be some restructuring, though, of that neighborhood engagement unit that consists of those beat officers. And so what I've committed to is maintaining the structure and maintaining the integrity of our neighborhood engagement officer unit and our beat officers. We will have every area right now that has a beat officer, a day and a night beat officer, will have a day and a night beat officer. The difference will be that the officers at that time will have larger geographic areas in order to cover. So that's going to be the difference. And I'm going to have some meetings coming up real shortly with the neighborhood association presidents to go into this plan in detail so that the community knows exactly what this is going to look like. But the fact that once this happens, we will have a neighborhood engagement unit. We will have beat officers in every area. We'll have beat officers in them.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Well, I kind of do, but I don't know what your public comment rules are, where I have to sign this sheet to put.
So the public comment rule, that's a great question.
Yeah, I want to know what your public
Basically,
comment.
this is all about promoting communication on all sides, and as long as you are in full agreement with that, that's the essence of the rules, but they're posted outside from when.
Outside?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't get much. Good evening.
Actually, for the camera, we have that.
Good evening. My question is posed towards, the mayor, okay? As everybody was given history of Albany Police Department's community policing. Yes, I think y'all forgot that they didn't get there by themselves. Up until August 23rd, I was the last founding member sitting on the Albany Community Policing Advisory Committee. When you came into office, Mayor, in 2013, APD, the Albany Community Advisory Committee, was being recognized nationally when you came in this door as mayor. You have never even acknowledged us, have never even recognized us, but yet we sit nationally for the work that we put together in order for this police chief to sit here in this room and for the rest of the police officers that I can name, first and last name. Some of them I know their wives and their family. But back in 2010, you couldn't do that without it being an incident. Now we can all sit in the same room. But you never acknowledge that, you never recognize that. I wanted to hold an audience with you in the summer. Your chief of staff told me that you do not participate with citizens on a citizen committee, but you're here. And you and the chief both haven't said anything about the community part of community policing. Yes, we're concerned about the lack of officers. And I know that they're down quite a bit, all right? But what about the community? You didn't get here by yourself with 21st century policing. I could just barely walk, trying to take care of the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th ward at the ACPAC table. There's none of your elected officials here. They don't even support us. Excuse me, Joyce. They don't even support us. Okay? We have one council member here, but your common council elected officials are supporting other citizens' forums. What happens to the community? That's what I want to know. Where do we fit in as people that's walking the street, as people that are getting shot inside their houses, as people that can't drive down the street without a bullet flying through their glass? Where does the community come in? That's my question to both of you. I understand the politics of it, but I want to know where I come in living in this community.
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that council members Kelly, Robinson, and Duche are here. APPAC was created under the leadership of Steve Krokoff as in collaboration with the council at the time, to create a committee that would advise the police department. It was not a committee that was created to advise the mayor. No. It was a committee that was created to, number one, advise the police department as they created their strategic plan, as well as to facilitate forums for conversations with the community as the police department developed its community engagement and its neighborhood engagement strategies. And I commend the department for that. And I think it was important not to politicize that and not to have that be seen as something that was being directed by an elected official. So I think that the ACPAC did a phenomenal job. I went to, and have been to many of the forums that ACPAC has hosted. ACPAC helped the department in facilitating forums around how body-worn cameras would be deployed, and were instrumental in helping to determine what that policy would be. And again, that was advising the department on the approach to body-worn cameras. And I remember attending at least 2 of those forums regarding the deployment of that. So, we hold forums with groups like Danielle's group, with neighborhood associations, with anyone who wants to engage and have conversations around policing in the city. There were very challenging conversations that occurred and meetings that occurred around not only the incidents that happened in Ferguson, but incidents that happened here in the city of Albany. And I have participated in all of those whenever asked to come and to sit. So I view ACPAC as an important part of how we got to where we are, but I also am looking to the chief, and the chief has been looking at how he wants to approach working with ACPAC and the community and those who will advise him as he continues to develop his policies, work on restructuring. I think he's done things the way that I would have expected him to do them. He's actually done what he said he was gonna do, which is why we hired him, which is to look internally first. This is a department that is hurting. This is a department that has been, I mean, the lack of resource and the lack of staffing and the stress that that puts on the officers all the way up to command staff is incredibly challenging. And so that is what he has tasked himself with really focusing on. And so, you know, I'm not gonna speak for him, but I think that we, you know, with the limited resources that we have, the focus has been internal. And now that he is moving forward and has identified ways to address a number of the internal challenges, it's really for the chief to determine how he's going to move forward with engaging the community policing advisory piece of that is important to this department and that I know he values.
Yeah, and you know, Bev, and I appreciate that. I know we've had this conversation, you know, a couple of times, you know, about this, and I understand where you're coming from with this, and you know, and like the mayor, in a couple of ways I want to answer this. And first, like the mayor said, you know, when I got here, and this is one of the first things that I did when I got here was get with the folks inside the department, get with the union presidents, get with some other people to find out, okay, internally, what's happening? How do our people feel? Because if they're not treated right internally, and if they don't feel like they're treated with dignity and respect and that they're valued, they can't do all the things that our community wants them to do. I mean, you know, they're just gonna be out, they're gonna just be out there just answering calls and doing what's necessary to collect a paycheck. But we need more than that. So we had to make sure that people are being treated right. So one of the first things I did when I got here was got with Officer McGee, and we talked about some officer wellness type initiatives. And we found some funding right away to do some things with our gym and our fitness equipment in order to allow officers to relieve stress and things like that. You know, we did some things with therapy dogs and some other stuff, you know, because we knew we had to treat our people right first. They had to understand that the leadership in the police department cared about them. You know, it was more than just giving them direction and orders to go out there and do community policing. You know, do our leaders in our department care for us so that we can go out there and go over and beyond for the community. So that was a focus that I had initially coming into the place, but simultaneously what I was doing was looking at some of the extra I got here still exists and is still being supported by me. So we have that. So whether it's dealing with individuals in the refugee and immigrant community, the pop-up barbecues, the school resource officers, community policing officers, all of those things have been supported strongly by me and will continue to be. And we're still at the same time looking at some other opportunities to expand what we already have. So there's been no reduction nor any compromising of the community policing ethic that has been established in this city prior to me getting here.
Hi, my name is Amy Jones. I'm a community organizer. But before I did that, I worked with the city and was involved in community policing efforts. I worked on the law enforcement assisted diversion program, doing outreach and the gun-involved violence elimination, working with group violence and outreach. And that's kind of been my thing before I did it professionally. My activism was intercommunal violence. I had great experiences with the enhanced supervision unit. a lot of those guys came out of like social work, and like we would sit and we would talk a long time about kind of the politics of policing and community policing, some of the harm that it causes our communities, kind of over-policing our communities who are already struggling. But I did have, I can't believe I'm saying this, I did have a good experience with the ESU. I also worked next to, when the truancy department was actually in this building, my cubicle was next to the truancy person. I don't believe they were an officer, but they traveled with 2 officers. And I was privy to their private conversations before they would go out, and I was privy to their conversations when they would come back in. The truancy representative would wear a bulletproof vest with the officers, and I do understand that. I didn't wear a bulletproof vest when I went out with the officers that I went out with, because I thought, you know, maybe it was a little threatening that I'm showing up as I want to help you, but I'm kind of dressed the same as the officers who could, something punitive could happen to you. So anyway, I was privy to their conversations before and after they would go out, and when they would come back in, it was painful to hear and to see the things that they would do to the people in the community who were already, their fabric of their lives was kind of stretched very, very thin. The representative would come back in and call social services and tell them they need to be, the household needs to be looked at for fraud. They would call Niagara Mohawk and say how big is their bill, their services need to be turned off. Just people who are already stretched all the way thin, they would come and they would just rip apart what was left of their households. And the police officers were involved in these conversations and kind of, and that kind of an attitude. And so I've seen like the both sides of it, and we all know there's both sides of it. There's a real social justice aspect that has to become a part of community policing. We don't need saviors. We are the experts in our own lives. We need more informal leadership drawn out of the community and brought before your new officers that are coming into our communities so that they can begin to understand where they're coming. It is nuanced. It is not one conversation. There's like always a board of like the experts, and there are more experts in our communities than you know. And I just like to bring that into your hearing, and I hope that that can happen.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Judy Boucher. I'm a member of the Albany County Council. I represent the 9th Ward. As you have been talking about the challenges being faced, I certainly appreciate them. Being down almost 25% of your workforce is very difficult to deal with, and recognizing that a lot of your workforce is you is also a challenge. There are 2 thoughts that I had. As you talk about changing the beats for the community policing, somebody was asking how many beats are there going to be, how many community officer beats are there going to be, and that question is one I couldn't answer. But I believe that we don't have much more than 15. We have 15 wards in the city. I work very hard. Most of my colleagues work very hard and staying very much in touch with people in their wards, and it is extremely challenging. So that's 15 districts and one person covering one of those districts. I would think would be very challenging to achieve what I've always understood community policing to be about, and that is for the police officers to really be aware of what is going on in the community, become familiar with people on every single block, and dealing with quality of life issues. I am beyond challenged, and I would imagine that if you wind up with something even at 15, that your officers are going to feel similarly challenged. That's just a gut reaction that I have that I want to share. The other thing is that as I listen to the number of people who, to some extent, we have a little bit of a revolving door, we have people retiring, you're gonna have a lot more new people come in. I'm a little bit concerned about my understanding, and that is that officers with a certain amount of seniority get to sort of get preferences, I want to say, in where they are assigned. And I would not want there to be a situation in which you have brand new officers concentrated in a particular area without there being, I want to say, some collaboration with some mentoring that goes on, with some great supervision, etc. And I imagine that some of that is actually a union contract kind of negotiation issue. I wonder if you share those concerns as you're looking at potentially getting in, trying to get up to speed, 50 more police officers coming in, and probably having, hired 30 or 40 in the last year. That's a lot of new police officers. How do you address that? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, to your first point, we're talking about the neighborhood beats and the beat officers and the expanded geographic area that they're going to be responsible for. We're still working our way through exactly what the geographic boundaries are going to be. We're pretty certain that we have the number that it's going to be, but it's not settled quite just yet. But there will be fewer officers assigned as beat officers than there are right now. And the reason that we settled on that, and we fully understand, and we're fully committed to community policing, and we know that how beneficial it would be to have officers with smaller geographic areas. But what we've seen is that because of the size of our neighborhood engagement unit and our beat officers, it didn't allow us to put some systems in place, organizational structures in place that will allow us to be able to cushion ourselves or to react, or to be proactive even, when we're having situations where we're having a mass exodus of officers. Because no matter what our officers are going to be paid, there still will be cycles where we're going to have 10 or 15 or 20 officers that leave at one time. And I'll even say this, and an officer brought up some numbers, and it's almost distressing to hear those numbers. But what he's talking about, those numbers that he brought up, are consistent across the country. This is just not an Albany issue. I mean, obviously there are some unique things that are happening in this city. I mean, there's like the mayor said, our officers need to be paid and they need to be have competitive wages. But these challenges that we're seeing are challenges that we're seeing in police departments across the country. When I get my little ticker every morning in my email from our national police organizations, almost every single day there's something from some department, from some other place in the country, where they're talking about officers are underpaid, officers are leaving urban areas and going to suburban areas because they pay more. How officers have, it used to be 2,000 or 3,000 people who applied for a police department, but now there's 300 or 400. The stories are all the same. Take the name off and put another name on there, and you can it's almost identical. And so we're confronting those challenges. And so as we're seeing those, what we need to do is we need to have a structure in place that will allow us to function and not put stress on these officers when we have these normal cycles like this. Because it's happening now, it's gonna probably happen 10 years from now, where there's gonna be some other issue that happens in the law enforcement universe that's gonna cause us to have a shortage of officers again, because it's also cyclical. But what's gonna happen then? Are we gonna be able to have a structure where we're not
having officers work 30 or 35 consecutive days in a row? Are we gonna have a structure in place where we don't have officers who are missing children's birthdays and holidays and can't take time off in the summer because they're being forced to work? And so we're not adjusting the neighborhood engagement unit because we are not committed to community policing. I mean, that's furthest thing from the truth. What we're doing is making some internal adjustments. We want to maintain the structure of that unit, but we're also understanding that there's some other needs in the department that need to be met now and 5 years and 10 years from now. And so as we put this together, we're committed, Judy, to making sure that when this settles, there are gonna be some challenges. We're gonna have officers who have larger geographic areas now, and they're gonna have to, it's gonna be difficult for some to have the same connections that they had before. But we're gonna be asking our officers to do a little bit more on that end, so that we can relieve some of the stress on the other side.
I just want to echo. I think that the challenge that we have and really elevating this conversation is something that particularly urban centers are also starting to talk about and advocate for. Springfield, Massachusetts, if you just play the tape, and it's the exact same percentage reduction of officers that they've had difficulty recruiting. And so we've got to look at what type of resource, particularly challenged urban centers like the city of Albany, where we have high concentrations of poverty, right? People who live in some of the poorest census tracts in the county, some of the poorest census tracts in the region. How are we going to be able to fund law enforcement going forward? And it has reached a crisis, and it's unfortunate that it's reached a crisis, but I always look for the silver lining, and one of those silver linings is that this is something that the mayors of Buffalo and Rochester and Syracuse are also talking about. And so we want to be able to advocate for more resource at the state level and at the federal level to address this issue, because it's incredibly challenging when you have these very wealthy, affluent suburban areas that have the ability to pay more and really are going after an already reduced pool of candidates.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mayor and Chief, and also the representative of the police officers. My name is Janelle Robinson. I'm the council member. I represent the Fifth Ward here in the city of Albany. And I just wanted to commend the chief on the great work he does. He has made sure he was in constant communication. He has been in constant communication with the council members who represent the districts when issues are happening within districts. But I have a question for you, Mayor, Chief, and representative for the police officers union. Recently, in my district, we had some young men who were assaulted by the APD, and it has caused undue stress and burden on our community, where it has put a fracture in a lot of the community policing progress that has already been made. And so my question to you, Chief, and whoever can answer this is, what did we learn from that situation as a police department, and also as a city government, and also as a representation from the police officers union, on how we can improve relations with the community so that issues like that will not happen again? I think that there was so many breakdowns in the complete community policing model for that situation to become as volatile as it became. So that's my question.
So from a police leadership position, and thank you, Councilman Robinson, for bringing that up, because it created a lot of problems, both internally and externally, in our city. And one of the things that we learned, one of the things that I learned as chief, as I reflected on that incident, is that, first, we have an incredible amount of commitment and dedication and compassion among the overwhelming amount of officers that we have in our department. Because we saw some things that were very, very unpleasant. We saw some things that were wrong. And those were the obvious things. Those were the kind of low-hanging fruit when you kind of evaluated this and reflected on it. But and I totally acknowledge that. But I also learned as I started talking to officers in the aftermath of that incident, is that the overwhelming number of officers that we have in this department are out there doing the right things for the right reasons. They're properly trained. They're compassionate. They're here, just like Officer McGee said, despite being underpaid. They're here because they want to serve this community. So that was one of the first. That was one of the things that I took away from it. But I also took away that there were some things that could have been done better. You know, there were some ways of addressing that specific incident, in not just that one, but any similar one, where we can involve, where we didn't have to do it all by ourselves. What I saw here is what I saw in the department I came from, and it's what I see in departments across the country, in police departments across the country. They're incredibly committed and dedicated and passionate. I mean, because that's why they got into this. You know, they want to fight fires. They want to climb the ladder and put out these fires. They want to go chase somebody who just stole a bike and jumping over fences, and they have to blow their knees out for somebody that committed a property crime. I mean, they're incredibly passionate. And so when you have that passion, sometimes we overlook the fact that there's other ways of addressing some issues. And so as I reflected that, you know, and I think we all did, the entire department realized, Councilman Robinson, that when we have these issues that we're incredibly passionate about resolving, that we don't have to do it alone. We can get our codes department involved, we can get recreation involved, we can get corp counsel involved. And we can develop a comprehensive, more holistic strategy for addressing some of these quality of life issues that we're having, so that we're not taking this passion that we already have. You know, we want to get rid of this problem. You know, we hear that, you know, we've heard that, and we've experienced that we've gone to this place 20-something times and it's still a problem. Well, the majority of officers are not going there with the idea that they're going to go and assault somebody or violate somebody's rights. The overwhelming majority of officers in situations like that are thinking, you know what, I've been here too many times, I need to fix this problem. I have this passion to make this problem go away. And so it's my responsibility. That's one of the things that as I reflected, I needed to do better. I needed to communicate and articulate to my people that there are some resources out there to help us when we have issues like that, so that they don't escalate and get us to a point where now our passion is misdirected. So going forward, I think we're there, Councilman. You know, right now, when we have these sorts of problems, you know, there was some lessons learned in that, and, you know, we're consistently now working with other city departments, other agencies, even if they're outside of the city, to help us develop strategies to address those problems so that we don't have to do it alone. And when we do have to take police action, then we're doing it in a way that we're not overstressing ourselves or overreaching.
To answer your question about the incident, obviously because of the pending legal action, there's not much I could say to them attorneys. What I can tell you from my personal experience, I was here when we had Kegs and Eggs. When that incident happened, after that, the city took a hands-on approach with us, and I can tell you that that was my zone. I worked hand in hand, I worked with the codes department, and we dealt with issues. Over the years, under this current administration, we have lost that working relationship. I knew the codes officers by first name. They had my number, I had their number. I could call them up. I could tell them that there was a house that was an issue. In these cases, up until that incident, those officers, we lost that. We lost that ability to call our codes guys, we lost that ability, and even up until that incident, you know, if you dealt with a codes officer, you dealt with somebody in your neighborhood, there was never follow-up for the patrol officer. So when you go to a house so many times over and over again, and you want to address an issue for the neighborhood, we love dealing with the communities, we do. You know, I've learned so much from people just going through a simple larceny report. You know, they just talk to you. People have so much life experience. But when you go there over and over again, you want to help people in the neighborhood, and then when the city fails you because you don't have the resources, it's draining on the officers. So we learned from that experience where we need to have that community partnership again with our codes, with our city hall, with City Hall. We need to know the fact that when you go to somebody's house 70 times, we have to address that. We need codes' help on that. We need, you know, we need the strength that we had when we dealt with those college kids when they were destroying the neighborhood over there. We don't have that anymore from City Hall. The men and women here, they feel we have zero support from City Hall.
And I just want to say that that is a complete and utter breakdown in two-way communication. So, you know, I deal with many unions across the city, and the union leadership of those unions call me when there's a breakdown in communication, when there's a concern, when something is happening that they feel that they're no longer getting the support or the resource that they need. And so we have a director of our codes department who is compassionate, passionate about his job, every bit as passionate about the work that he does as our police officers are, and who, had there been a conversation, had anyone said a word about a breakdown in responsiveness from the codes department, it would 100% have been addressed. And so we have redoubled our commitment to ensuring that a breakdown in communication is not the source of a lack of working together and a lack of resource for the department. It's unusual for there to be a house with that many calls where somebody isn't calling my office and City Hall. And we track our calls, and we did not receive any calls about that house. And it's unfortunate. So that is something that we all have to own, but that it's a two-way street. And I cannot tell you how often I am contacted by union leadership across this city, whether it's the fire department or the Department of General Services, blue-collar workers in the water department, when they have a concern that there is a breakdown or that they are not getting the support that they need, they come to my office, we sit down, and we talk it out, and we address it. And the chief has redoubled on that commitment. It is not something that was intentional. It's not something that was the result of anyone not wanting to support this department. I have leadership meetings every 2 weeks, and at the end of those meetings, I say to every leader in the city, do you need anything from anyone else sitting at this table? Right? We have to work together. Our commissioners have to work together. The Deputy Commissioner Workforce Services is here because a lot of the issues that we have with respect to public safety are that we have people who are living and struggling in circumstances where we need to be doing a better job of connecting them to jobs and to the resources that they need. So there is tremendous passion on the part of every department of this city to support one another and to create neighborhoods that are safe. And communication is a two-way street.
I'm somewhat in a state of shock. I came to a meeting that I think was misnamed. I really don't see how we can talk about community policing unless we address the dire situation that Albany is in. And even though we say it's a national problem, Albany, it seems, is the lowest paid in the capital region. I'm Reverend Joyce Hartwell. I head up a committee for the Council of Albany Neighborhood Associations. My committee is Economic Development and Social Responsibility. I would invite the union to make a presentation with the chief and the mayor, if they care to come, to the Council of Albany Neighborhood Associations. Because I think the city has to be much more aware of what's going on and the dire straits we're in. I don't think we can really talk about community policing until we heal the police department and meet the needs of resources. So I would suggest, I will call Kana, that we do a meeting at the Council of Albany Neighborhood Association so the whole city can hear this. Because there aren't enough people at this meeting to really hear what's going on. I appreciate your work, Chief. I really respect everything you're doing. But we really have to make people more aware of what's needed and get support for resources.
So the hour is growing near, and I want to just make sure that we get to at least one online question before we go to closing statements. So somebody asks, what is something that everybody who's sitting at this table here today can do to begin building on what's already been done to help build community policing and come to an agreement?
I can say, and I appreciate that question, and I think that from the discussion here today, I think we sort of answered that. I think we're all in consensus that community policing is important. We're all committed to it. We all understand the importance of it. But there's some challenges, obviously, with the implementation of certain things, staffing and some other things. But we're all, at least from my perspective, you know, we're all, I'm totally committed to it.
From the union's perspective, the biggest thing for us right now is we gotta get a contract. We have to get a pay raise for these men and women. We have to stop overworking them so much so that they don't go home to their wives or their husbands and say, hey, sorry, I missed I missed dinner, I missed our kid's birthday. We have to make us competitive. We understand, as the union leader, we get it. We're not gonna make Colony money, we're not gonna make Gilwood money, we understand that. But Schenectady counterparts should not be making $12,000 more. One of the big things, when you're so understaffed like this, as a patrol officer, you can't take that time now on that call to sit there and talk with the victim person who's calling. We need that ability to do that again. I can't just go to, it's disheartening when you go to a call, hey, what's your name, date of birth, and here you go, here's the victim's rights form, and see you later. Our neighborhood engagement officers do a phenomenal job, but it's also community policing in terms of the patrolman aspect as well. We need those guys to be able to sit there and take the extra 5 minutes to talk to you. It's just human nature, but we can't do that when we're so understaffed and we don't attract the actual candidates we need. I don't believe Judy's here still. One of the things about younger officers is when we have this mass exodus, we need officers with experience to train these younger officers. That's how we get community policing. The guys who have been here for years, who are vested into this, we don't want to lose them anymore. We need to keep them here so that they teach these younger officers how to do community policing.
I would love to say that we could settle a contract tomorrow. Unfortunately, we are precluded from bargaining with this union right now, and we hope that they are able to get that resolved. I would love nothing more than to get a letter from FERB telling us that we can get back to the negotiating table and try to work out a contract. We had thought we had worked out a contract a few years ago, and that was voted down by the membership of the union, and we ended up with an arbitration award that to me was not where we wanted to be. And so it's challenging. As people know, we have been challenged with resources, but we also know that we need to be able to retain employees. And this is not where I want to be. It's really a terrible position for our common council to be in, for our administration to be in, when we are not able to get to a place where we would like to be, so that we can attract and retain a police force that is so crucial and so important to this community.
Okay. So we're trying to stay clear, stay near the hour. Does anybody have any final words?
You have final word.
Well, if there's no objections.
How's it going? My name is Antoine Johnson. I just relocated back into the area, stationed out in Fort Bliss, Federal. And I came in today because I seen a flyer for community policing. So I did some research online and I found an article that pretty much documents Albany's history with community policing. And when I came in today, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed because being back into this community, the disconnect between the leaders and the community, I can sense it walking in. I'm not read up on all the stuff, the numbers and stuff like that, but I know leadership. And I came in because you guys lead the community and the disconnect. A lot of it is, oh, well, we have to do this and we have to do that, instead of saying, we're going to do this, taking the initiative. And I just think that should be addressed.
Mr. Johnson, is that what, Mr. Johnson? Yes. Yeah, thank you for that, and you're right, it's important to have leadership that understands that there needs to be a plan, but we need to recognize the problem, and we need to have a plan in place. And maybe I wasn't clear enough with what's going forward, at least with the police department, but we recognize the challenge. We recognize that we have an issue with morale that is caused by lack of staffing and low pay and some of the other things. We recognize all those things. But as I said before, at the very outset, we have a plan in place to address the health and wellness of our officers during this extremely challenging time. Because that's really what you're saying. It's not just a police organizational issue. I mean, this is an organizational issue across the board. If you have severe stress amongst employees and people who are working in an organization, you're not going to get productivity out of those folks if they don't feel that they're being treated with dignity and respect, and they have support from those who are in leadership positions. And so, just like I talked about, how the mayor talked about, as soon as I got here, I recognized that we needed to address health and wellness with our officers before we could address output, before we could address productivity. We had to give our officers the tools and the support they needed to go out there and do some of those things. And so we immediately instituted those types of initiatives in our department in order to do that. And then we're also looking long term. We know that what's causing a lot of the problems right now, as Officer McGee eloquently stated, is our current staffing situation. If we were fully staffed, then we wouldn't be having a lot of the conversation that we're talking about right now. We would still talk about officers being adequately and fairly compensated. And as the mayor's talked about that piece of it, how the challenges with that.
Yes, but I've seen this before. So you have these vacancies, like she's not here anymore, but she said, what happens when the senior officers who can walk out the door don't want to walk through the beat in the places where there need to be leadership, mentorship. So now you put brand new officers in environments they're not prepared for. They don't have the mentorship or the just days on the job to fulfill that. You guys are you're hiring, I'm not saying you're gonna hire anyone, but if you're trying to fill spots, more people are gonna come in. The selection, the vetting process is gonna be kind of saturated. How are you gonna ensure that the cops that you bring in, when you put them in those situations, especially with the climate that's going on, they're gonna be prepared to do their job without senior mentorship directly above them?
Training is huge. The types of training that officers get, the type of support they get. See, because that's really what you're getting at. Our officers appropriately trained to do what they're supposed to be doing, whether they have 2 years or 20 years. All right, do they have the appropriate supervision to oversee what they're doing? Because a lot of this is governed by labor contracts in terms of who can get a position and who can't. So we're governed by that in a certain extent. But what we can do is to make sure that wherever they're assigned, it doesn't matter if they're a beat officer, a patrol officer, school officer, or wherever they are they appropriately trained? Are they getting things in areas of implicit bias, cultural competency, dealing with individuals who have mental health issues. Are they getting that sort of training?
We've seen the studies, the implicit bias, they barely work. And I'm saying, when we're talking about community policing, they go in there with the training is how you're trained is not how it is all the time when you're in that environment. So if we're talking about strengthening community policing, how are you going to ensure those new officers are gonna want to go into those communities and implement themselves into that community and form that?
And I know you want to weigh in on this, but let me just real quickly answer part of this. A lot of this goes way back to the type of officers that we were recruiting to this place in the first place. Are we getting individuals who have the sort of consciousness that's needed to do this job in the very first place? And that's part of the background process and bringing people in. In our background process, we have about a 70 to 80% failure rate in our background because we're very, very selective. Despite the fact that we're running right now, we're very selective on the type of individuals that we bring into this department. So we're looking at, we're looking at their interpersonal communication skills. You know, the biggest complaint I get right now? If I get a complaint right now, it's not going to be a use of force complaint. It's not going to be some physical sort of complaint. It's going to be a complaint that involves communication skills. It's going to be a complaint that an officer didn't show empathy. An officer talked to somebody the wrong way. An officer didn't listen. An officer didn't communicate some things. So what we're doing, the other answer to your question is, we're looking to see what is society asking for in police officers today. That's part of what you're talking about right now. What does society want? And so what we're doing is producing officers in this community that this community wants. In this community, not just here, but across the country, is saying that we're not so interested in how fast the person can run, how strong they are, how many fences they can jump. You know, when I was almost 30 years ago, when I was a brand new officer, and I was going into the locker room, the older officers in there, one of the first things they told me, they said, "Rookie, how many push-ups can you do? How fast are you? How many fights have you been in?" That was what they were looking for in police officers decades ago. But right now, we're in the city of Albany looking for different types of officers to go into these neighborhoods that you're talking about, whether they have 2 years or 20 years. And we're not interested in so much in how strong they are. We're not interested in how fast they are so much. What we're interested in is, can they communicate with people who think different than them, people who look different than they do. And so it's a complex question that you're asking that would probably take about 2 hours to answer. But the bottom line is that we're very, very selective on who we bring in here, and we give people in this department more training, and our union president can attest to this, more training than pretty much any agency in this area in terms of what they're getting when they're coming out of our police academy.
So just to piggyback one more question, the gentleman asked if you're recruiting on college campuses, and you didn't really answer that question. I spent a lot of time in Green Valley. I don't see that's cool right there.
No, sir. So I did answer that. I told him that we are recruiting on college campuses. In fact, we're vigorously and aggressively recruiting on college campuses. We're aggressively recruiting in our high schools. We're aggressively going out and recruiting in our community. I don't know what access you have to our recruiting efforts, but what you may want to do is, once we're done with this meeting, I can connect you with the people in our department. We have people who are dedicated to recruiting in this place, and I can connect you with them so you know exactly where we're going, and so you have more, so you're a little bit more aware of what our efforts are in that area.
And I'd just like to add, this department has challenges. Departments across the country have challenges. The pressure that our police officers are under, and the types of, to me, totally reprehensible things that happen to these officers, right? The disrespect with which they are treated and subjected to at times. I see it, I hear about it, and to a person, the members of this department are committed to their jobs. Are they frustrated with the number of hours that they're working? Absolutely. Do they need to get paid more money? Absolutely. But what I see when I am out on the streets and what I hear overwhelmingly from our residents is that they do an amazing, outstanding job under really, really, really difficult circumstances. And when we look at what we need to be doing more of, is that we need to be doing more of talking about that part of their job and when they're getting it right and when they are against all odds, right, under really, really difficult circumstances, doing amazing service to this community. And I am proud of this police department. I'm proud of the work that they do. I see it, and as a leader, I need to say it more. But to a person, this department does amazing work under really, really difficult circumstances. And if we could control all of these factors, right, we wouldn't be in this situation, but we are where we are. And leadership is about what do we do to fix it going forward. And under the chief's leadership, with a lot of people working really hard behind the scenes, that is what we are committed to. But to a person, this department, they go out there and do their job. And so I know we've heard a lot about, hours and pay, but, for the residents of the city of Albany, they are out there doing their jobs every day. And for that, we should all be grateful and thankful.
Absolutely. Do you want to word before we?
First off, thank you for your service. To answer the question about leadership, and training and things of that nature, prior to Chief Hawkins getting here, we had a severe deficiency in training. We hadn't had active shooter training. We go to the range once a year. We had, I couldn't tell you if I had to go to Albany High for an active shooter. We had a severe deficiency in that. With Chief Hawkins here, one of the big things was training. Let's start training. Let's lead the way in training. Let's bring our in-service schools back. We have a building for in-service that we can't house that. So one of the Chief Hawkins' thing was, let's get a bigger building for our in-service. So he is leading the way for us as a leader. We do appreciate that. So, I know you said about leadership, leading from the front. Chief Hawkins is leading from the front.
All right, well, I just want to quickly say thank you to everybody, and to our elected officials, city officials, and union president here. We have our community forum coming up Tuesday, October 21st. That information is on our Facebook, a block at a time, and we'll be here if you guys want to talk.